Okay.
Thank you so much. Because then it will help us if we want at some point to use these material for learning as when we create our
Sure.
training.
Yeah. Okay. So so the problem area which we are discussing is that the software systems are all disintegrated, right? Within the organization, the tools which we buy to enable us to perform jobs, right? The same tool becomes a nightmare eventually, because if you have to follow a particular thread with a customer as what has happened, you really have to do a lot of additional efforts, right? In most cases, manual efforts to see. And a lot of the cases, what happens is that you get a perspective of likely less than 50% as what has happened in the system for that transaction. So the chaining of threads doesn't happen, right, with the current structure which we build. And that's the reason we thought that, okay, but if you compare, you know, the entire human system, right? If you have to pick up the person who is working on it, for example, exactly remembers everything, right? Even if the data is structured into different systems, right? The person who is interacting with that customer on that transaction, he remembers that, okay, I have received an email on that day, and then he has called me also that, okay, he needs. But the problem here is that the person who remembers is, you know, is the business is very dependent on that person, right? And if he moves on, then you lose the complete business context, right? And the another challenge is that if your team grows, in which you have made your whole things in more departments, then the collection of those events with that customer or with that business, especially in the B2B case, right? That gets also distributed. So no one person really gets a complete perspective of what is being communicated on that, you know, on that channel or on that transaction. So, but if you see the human system, right, when you talk to anybody, right, even if you have met them, you are meeting them after 10 years, right, your brain presents everything right up front with you, right? You are able to recollect in the exact sequence of as and when that has happened.
Yes.
So the human brain is more efficient, right, in terms of presenting, you know, querying what is being stored in your system, right? And then presenting it back as and when you need it, right? And in the exact sequence as when it has happened, right? And you make all types of decisions on top of it, right? So the understanding of those neurons, right? So human brain is made up of billions of neurons, right? So so those neurons work together to, one is store those information in the right context, and then linking those information in the sequential way or in the way as it has happened, and then presenting it back. So obviously, you know, the human brain has that capability. Unlike your software system, that software system built for a hotel will not work for a hospital, right? Whereas the human brain has this ability, you know, to learn and adapt and perform all types of jobs. You know, whether it's a hospital industry or a hotel industry or a manufacturing setup. So we said that, okay, let's go and rewire, you know, reconstruct everything right from scratch, because we have to repaint the world now, you know. And that's where the whole idea of the product came, that, you know, we need to make this entire software systems more simple. Now, why do we call Cordis, right? Where is that chord coming in? So if you see, you know, so when you are repainting the whole world, you need to think everything very generically, right? Very naturally. So the first thing which from the business system, which is the key, is a transaction, right? So when we say transaction, transaction can be a monetary transaction or it can be a non-monetary transaction as well, right? When we are meeting here on this Zoom link, right? So this is also a transaction where the ideas are being exchanged, right? The voice is being exchanged here, right? So that is also one transaction. So a transaction, whether it's a monetary or a non-monetary thing, it always requires at a minimum two parties, right? So you need at least two parties to have a transaction. And when you remember that see that two parties in a very general terms, we said that okay, whenever you connect two parties, we can call it as a connecting on a particular thread, like what we used to play as in childhood, right? With two tin boxes, right? And we connect those with thread, and we used to communicate, right? And that thread used to be so the idea of that idea of communication of two parties on a thread is what we call it as a cord. And now that cord basically is the communication platform. Okay, so you can imagine it that way. It's very similar to the cord can also be viewed in terms of the human brain as a neurons, right? Which helps us connect. So the cord is the single unit. If we have a way to identify two parties, right, universally, and when these two parties connect, right, that relationship, if we can identify uniquely on the as a whole over the universe, right? So then we can start building systems on top of it. Now the concept here is that we identify every individual is different, right? So you can identify individuals individual in its own capacity as unique, right? You can identify with some IDs. You have in Aadhaar card, you have retina scans and others. And then when two parties connect, whether it's an individual to individual connection or business to individual or business to business connection, those two parties combined together can also be uniquely identified. Okay. So basically cord, if you see, is we identify those two parties coming on a particular relationship as a unique cord.
Okay. So just to clarify this point, so basically, if we are talking about VCA, VCA manages cords between different businesses and businesses, or businesses and individuals, and each of those connections forms a cord.
Yes, exactly. So so let me take a board here. Okay, so so yes, the VCA, the first thing which is the very basics of a VCA is to identify one is either an individual, it can be a business, and that is how the whole world works, right? We are talking generically. So I have this pen which is a bit annoying. I need to get it working here. So these are the only possibilities, right? Either individual and businesses connect, or individual and business individual to individual connection, or business to business connection. That is the only possible ways if you see the whole world. And then we have now systems, the machines which has started connecting, right, to people. So this is basically machine to machine, and then the same machine to businesses, right, and to individual. So these are the additional possibilities which is coming in the IoT space. We are doing this as well, but for the sake of this discussion, we will focus on this. right? So
Okay.
every individual can be, and whenever these two people connect, right? Business may connect with an individual as a, the relationship can be called as a customer, right? It can also be called as an employer-employee, right? It can also be, generally we can call it as a buyer and a seller. Okay, it can be a investor-investee. There has to be a relationship, and if we have that relationship, if
Yeah.
that relationship is identified, that relationship, we can build a cord,
Yes.
right?
So
And we,
technically, if my business sends an email to an individual, would that be considered as a cord or?
yes, so whenever you have two parties, right? In an email also you have two parties
Yeah,
at a
yeah,
minimum,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the first thing which VCA does is it identifies those two parties,
Okay.
Yes.
right? This individual, we call that individual or business in general as a front. The idea of front here is just like a shop, right? The shop present itself, right? With a hoarding on top of it, that this is what I am, right? So similarly, in general terms, in the VCA terms, we call that, the
This is
individuals
branch.
or
Yeah.
businesses as a front. The front
Okay.
can be a individual front or a business front. It
Business.
can be a IoT front like a machine, right? So the entities are identified as a individual or a business or a machine, and
Okay.
we call them as a general concept as front. And then
Okay.
when two fronts, right? When two fronts connect on a particular relationship, right? We identify a chord, which we call it as a relationship chord.
Okay.
And we give it a unique identifier, just like a primary key in a database, right? We give a unique identifier globally, right?
Okay.
Between these two fronts, that my relationship chord is something, we call it as a 36 character usually. There is a concept of GUID.
Okay.
So in a time and a space, you can have, only one unique 36 character ID, which can identify you. So that's a guaranteed thing. So basically, all in all, we basically give it a relationship chord. We call it as a CC, connection chord
Okay.
also. Okay, so
Okay.
we call that as a connection chord, and that is a unique thing in our VCA. Within the VCA, we are giving it as, so one is a local connection chord. Another is, so when you are on a particular VCA system, so you see everything in the reference of that your own business, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The whole ecosystem. So we give it as a the CCID as a big integer, right? So that is
Okay.
more of a technical implementation, but the same CCID, if you go to the entire ecosystem, right? We give that 36 character, which uniquely identifies that relationship between this and this. So there is a,
Can you just repeat that once more?
yeah. So we have two things here. When we are building this product, we have one platform called VCA, which is
Yeah,
a business platform,
yeah,
Yeah.
which you have been interacting as of now, which
yeah,
most
yeah.
of us interact in the organization. There is another product called Pushcord.
Okay.
Okay, so this Pushcord, we basically the product Pushcord, one is we call it as Pushcord for business, which we internally refer it as VCA. And
Okay.
another
Okay.
is a Pushcord for people. We just say it as Pushcord
Okay.
internally. Within the organization, if you call only Pushcord, they will say that, okay, that's a Pushcord for people.
Okay.
And another
Okay.
one is a Pushcord for business, which we have been
Which is
using it,
VCA.
which we internally refer it as VCA.
VCA.
Now,
Okay.
if you remember, if you see the current system, if you go outside of your ecosystem, outside of our organization, the only way you can communicate with your external ecosystem is an email platform as of now,
Yeah.
right? So that's the most common platform. It can be phone also. On a mobile phone, you can get a call, but email is the only platform in which you get your invoices. You can write your queries and other things, right? So email is again, 30 plus year, old system,
Yeah.
which is very static, right? Which is very static. You get, so for example, you have given any of your fridge for a repair, right?
Mm.
So you really don't get any real snapshot in time. You have given
Mm.
your bike or a car for a servicing. What is happening in that you really don't get. What you
Yes.
get is a discontinuous snapshots, right?
Mm. Mm.
That okay, you got okay, your order has been confirmed, and after a few
Mm.
days you get that this is the current status if you ask. So whereas the world is moving very is moving towards something which is more real time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm.
So you if you see Facebook, right, people are
Mm.
reacting on it. Everything is more real time, very live, when it comes to Twitter and Facebooks.
Mm.
We don't have a similar system in the business. So what we are saying is that email is a story of past, right?
Mhm.
Mm.
Let's come to a platform, wherein the users can really see what is happening in their cards, right? What is what
Mm.
on their
Mhm.
transactions, what is happening on that in a very live way, and they can interact on those live cards.
Okay.
So for
Mhm.
that to happen, you need to have a unified structure first,
Mm.
Okay.
right? You can't, because otherwise then you have to keep on building, different solutions. Every business has to come and build those solutions in a custom way, and that is
Mhm.
again going to be impractical because that involves cost. So the end users, nobody wants to spend on that, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
is the internal system which people spend. But if you have something very generic, right,
Mhm.
just like an email, right,
Mm.
which can give you a platform in which people can interact on that live thing, then nobody has to build or put an effort additionally in, putting those monies additionally to build that entire system. And then that's where the Cordis is again taking that initiative to build a public platform, right, free
Mhm.
of cost, which we call it as a push cord, right,
Mhm.
wherein the cards can be exchanged, in towards the entire business ecosystem in the world, right? The consumers can log in, and I can have a single place in which I can see all my cards. I can have a
Okay.
card with a St. John's Hospital, for example. I can have a card with a Toyota car, which you may own, right? I can have a bike servicing guy, and I can have so
Okay.
many, right?
So
So wherever
Pushcord is
I'm,
like where I have an account, I log in and all my interactions with everybody except me, all other businesses or individuals will hopefully be integrated into a single place.
into a single place, just like an Gmail,
Okay.
if you go today, right,
Mhm.
to
Mm.
see, what invoice has come from your retail outlet, what
Mm.
invoice has come from there, right? So
Mhm.
so that is the same push card, where you have a collection of all those cards rather
Yeah.
than an email.
So if I was to take Facebook as the ecosystem of all my relations, colleagues, friends,
Yes,
classmates,
yes.
everything. So
Yeah.
similarly, Pushcord would be something where it's an integration of
Equal.
all my business dealings,
Yes, all your transactions with businesses,
transactions, yeah, business
or
transactions.
and not only with businesses, but with individual to individual as well.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay,
Anywhere
so you
where
can.
there is exchange of goods.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
exchange of goods and
Services.
Mm.
exchange of services, or exchange of non-monetary things as well,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
where you can make a call, for example,
Emails. Yeah.
right? You can also do an email if you want. You can make
Yeah.
a chat,
Chat.
right? You can exchange some documents.
Mhm.
So those non-monetary things as well.
Mhm. So
Okay.
that is the
Just
Pushcord part.
That's the push card part, the consumer part of it, as a
Mhm.
end
okay.
user of it.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, where you don't have to define your business process and all. You are just a consumer, and you are seeing that
Mhm.
what is happening on a particular card. So with
Okay.
Cordis, somebody is starting a interview session, right? The HR
Mhm.
team has started interacting with them. So right from
Mm.
there until the complete life cycle, right? So he gets hired, and he serves for a decade or so, and then he moves out, right? So
Mm.
after, even he moves out, he can extract and see what has been happening, right? His salary slips, if he wants to see what are the PF details. So everything, handling the entire life cycle of transactions between an individual and a business, or from business to business perspective, you can see it.
Okay.
So
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 for
that is
example,
what is
if
the
I am
push card system.
individual X, and there's a company ABC, then company ABC needs to subscribe to Pushcord, and I also need to subscribe to Pushcord for the system
Exactly.
to work.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yes.
All right.
And the key thing here is that it should be just limited to a subscription only. It should not go beyond that in really building a system which can in building that whole Pushcord system or building a custom solution. So if you're internal, if you follow the structure of a cord, it will become seamless in terms of exchanging data across systems.
So I can be a business also and an individual as well.
Individual as well.
Okay.
Yes. So we saw that, okay, we have this concept of connection cord, which is uniquely identified in a system, right? So now what happens on a connection, on a relationship cord? The moment you identify F1 and F2, so you have a relationship cord, or call it as a connection cord. So on those relationships, we do multiple transactions, right? So we call that as a transaction cord. So you go to a specific shop, right? And so for example, let's say Big Bazaar, right? Or the Big Basket, right? So that when it's a big basket, there's another relationship cord which uniquely identifies you and Big Basket. If there is another Big Bazaar, then you go to some bike servicing or a car servicing. You go to some clothing store, right? So you have individual in your ecosystem, right? As you as an individual in the center, you have a complete ecosystem of relationships which you are connected with, right? With FI, FJ, and so on. So you're seeing you as a central system, you have different relationship cards with with your ecosystem. Now, on each of those cards, right, you may do a transaction once or multiple times. Correct. So over a period of time, you keep on going and you keep adding multiple transactions. So we identify those transaction cards as another unit within that relationship.
Okay. So there will be one connection code between F1 and F2, but multiple transaction code will be there, right?
Yes. Yes. So once we identify two parties, we got that, okay, this is a unique identifier. Whenever I see these two parties, I can navigate to this connection, and then within that connection, you can have endless number of transactions, which happens over a period of time.
From the perspective of what we have been doing on VCA, we have this thing called CCID, right? For each tenant, we've been asked to extract that CCID. So that CCID is what uniquely identifies this thing that called RC.
Yes. So the RC, the relationship code, is basically your CCID.
Okay.
The CC is basically the connection.
Okay.
You can call it as
a tenant has only one CCID, right?
Okay, so the tenant is like this. When you are creating a business, tenant is F1, right?
Okay.
And what we do here is we create a default connection, right? Because as a business, we said that you need at least two parties, right? And what would be the most trivial case would be that you would like to have a connection with yourself.
Okay.
In order to store some of your personal data. Okay, you really don't want your personal notes, for example, right? Or your own company documents in case of a business, right? So there can be some documents that so that is the most trivial thing. So that is where we say that, okay, with F1 we create a default F1 RC also, which we call it as a self connection.
Okay. Yeah, that's the self, and from the self, that relationship's ID is the CCID for the tenant.
CCID 1 is the CCID for the tenant, but when we add any individual or a business front in the in that VCA, we also call that also as a CCID.
Okay, so that also has a CC.
Yes, that also has a CCID. This CC is nothing but a instance of a relationship with another person.
Okay, so let me, suppose for the Cordis Vidya publication is one of the client, right? So
Yes.
Cordis to Vidya publication, we have only one CCID. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So as a Cordis, right? Whenever you create a new VCA, you identify yourself first.
Mhm.
Mm.
There is a self connection. So F1 to F1, that is the default we create whenever a tenant is created. Whenever a
Mhm.
business is spawned for the first time, we give by default that there is one connection which is a self connection which is available. And what is there is an ID. CC ID is nothing but a unique primary key, you can call it. There's a
Mhm.
ID, let's say a 235 he gets, right? Now
Mhm.
after this F1 keeps on adding, it starts building connections, because the moment business is live, it will add new individuals and businesses, right? So every time F1 adds a new individual or a business, we give some ID, 236, 237, right? And so on and so forth. And we
Oh,
identify what type of relationship is it.
so this will be the relationship ID. Is this value, this 23536 will be
The connection code ID.
the
See, the
connection
connection code
code
is a
ID?
is a concept.
Mhm.
Connection code is a concept, but when we see an ID, we call it as a, so connection code, if you see, there will be a table called connection code.
Mhm.
What it will have here is, on one side, it will be fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, other side will keep on changing. F2, F3, F4. So for example, Cordis is there, then Cordis with Cordis, the key systems which we have is, Cordis will have one Arbab here, it will
Mhm.
have you here, right? It will have Raisa here and so on. So every time Cordis is adding you in its system, it is adding a record here in a
Okay.
connection code table, and it is giving an ID here,
Okay.
It is trying
235.
to relate it to what we have done on the system. That's, I think.
Yes. And the more you ask questions, you will get more clarity.
Yeah. So the connection code, if we see, we create different employees. Like we have an employee front, we have created 5 employees.
Mhm.
So when we look at connection code and attribute value creation, we see these 5 or 15 employees that we have. So
Correct.
what we are trying to say is each of these employees will have an individual, will have a variable associated with them that will have a unique value.
You forget about variables. Variables are something which is further an extension. I'll come to that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
as a concept, you should understand here that the connection, right, is something uniquely identify a particular relationship between two parties. So when
Okay.
it comes to VCA on the left hand side, it is always Cordis,
Okay.
Okay.
right,
So
or
when
that
we
business.
create the projects, we don't need to create any CCID. That will be the fixed one, right?
The
CCID,
self CCID will be fixed one.
fixed one.
Okay.
So for
Okay.
a VCA, like I have an account, then we do have another account. So I can say for an account, there will be one self and one CCID. Am I right?
Uh, okay, so the CCID is just a column,
Mm,
which is unique,
mm,
which is uniquely generated whenever you add a new entity, or whenever you add a new
Front.
front
mm.
in the system.
Mhm.
That's where
Mhm.
the CCID automatically gets generated. That
Okay.
happens in the background. You don't generate it.
Okay,
The
yeah.
moment you add anybody in your ecosystem, it creates in the background a CCID, and that
Okay.
CCID is unique within that entire system, which uniquely identifies those parties. So what we do here
Okay.
is we have relationships, right? So one side it can be a buy, another side it can be a sell, right? Employer, employee, right? So this always happens in a pair, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And depending upon which reference frame you are seeing it, you will have a buyer or a seller. You call it
Mhm.
as a buyer or a seller.
Mm,
Call it as an employer and an employee. So the moment if you are in this system where you are basically a buyer, right, or you are a seller, so you will see the other party as the opposite of that relationship. So whenever you create any connection, right,
mm,
what does businesses do? businesses, the first thing before it can do any transaction, first they need to identify that person or that business to whom they are interacting, right? So in order to interact, you will have here let's say the first person is an employee, another person can be a Microsoft, in which we buy we buy licenses for operating system. Another system can be Dell, where we buy laptops from them. So these are different relationships which Cordis is connecting to different entities, different fronts.
Okay.
And when we have to identify these two pair, right? To identifying a pair, we call it as a connection, right? And what would be the ID of that technically? So those are the IDs which we give.
Okay. So, for example, Cordis is there, Dell is there, Microsoft is there.
Yes.
So, Cordis orders software from Microsoft. So that relation will have a unique CCID, and
Yes.
Dell orders software from Microsoft, they'll have a unique CCID.
Yes. So when we say Dell to Microsoft, right? So we are neither a Dell or we are neither a Microsoft, right? But when we come to the reference frame of Dell, and Dell starts using VCA, yes. If Dell starts VCA, from that reference frame, we will have one CCID in the Dell system. Similarly, if we go to the MS and they have their VCA, so from
they'll
the
have
Microsoft,
their own self CCID.
Yes, they have their own self CCID, plus they will have one CCID with Dell as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for Dell, we will add Microsoft as a front, as a business front.
Yes, yes.
And that
exactly.
point, the CCID will be generated between Dell and Microsoft.
Exactly.
Similarly,
So,
for Microsoft, if we add Dell as a front, at that point, the CCID will be generated.
Yes. So every pair of relationship is basically is called a CC, basically in general terms, and it will have a unique identifier, which we call it as a CCID.
Okay.
So the default one is the relationship with self.
Okay.
Okay. That also we give a CCID, and that happens the moment you build the system for the first time.
Yeah, both of us were working on the CCID thing just before the call, so that's why it really helps at this point.
Yes. So many times what happens is, when you are building it, the philosophy behind it, why we are doing it, and how you are being driven. If you understand the concept, then you can challenge why we are doing like that.
Yeah.
Right. So what we saw here is the connection chord, right? And so connection is basically identifying two parties in a pair, right? So, and within that, we saw that we have a transaction chord, right? TC1 and TC2 and till TCN. Now, whenever, I mean, this transaction can be of, these are the instances of your TS. Okay, the transaction styles which you are seeing. If you would have seen by now in the dashboard. So transaction style basically between two parties. Again, if you see that you may have multiple variations of transactions, right? When I say multiple variations, the straightforward one is you go and buy something, right? So now your buying behavior between so as a F2, if you go as an individual with when you do a business transaction with F1, you may have some certain way of discounts, getting discounts, and you may have certain way of doing business, that transaction. Whereas the another party F3, when it goes right and does a transaction with the same F1, it can be a business. You can be an individual doing some transaction with them, and then the another party can be maybe a bulk buyer, right? It may be a business, another business which is doing a transaction with F1. So the way of the mode of transaction may be very different from what you are doing with them. And that is why we see that the behavior in which the transaction is being done, that can the nature of it can change, and that is why that is where we call it as a transaction style. What is the style of that transaction? Okay, what is the behavior of that transaction?
So maybe like, for example, I am a customer for an appliance shop. First time my interaction is I go buy a microwave from them. So that is one transaction style. Next time my interaction is I'm giving the same microwave for repairing.
Yes.
So will that be
Yes.
two states or two different transaction styles?
It will be ideally, we would see technically there are many things you can achieve because you have
Mhm.
nuts and bolts, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
But that is actually a different transaction style
Okay.
because the
Okay.
behavior changes there,
That's what
right?
that's one
Right.
thing.
So just like a instance of a relationship is a card, similarly the instance of type of your transactions is a transaction card.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you buy it for the first time, and then you go and do a repair.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so the repair is a different transaction altogether.
Okay.
So
Okay.
All
you
right.
create a transaction card on, let's say, 27th of April, right?
Mhm.
You have bought this, so you got a
Mhm.
card which identifies that, right?
Mhm.
It will have its own invoice, and later you request for a repair. So that's on
Mhm.
another day, right?
Yeah.
And that's another transaction card.
That's another
Okay.
transaction code, but is that also another transaction
Another
style?
transaction style, because
Yeah.
when it comes to repair,
Mhm.
right,
It's
when
a
it comes
different
to repair,
process.
there's a different team altogether which is involved, and the way
Yes.
that transaction style will go through or follow a particular process will be completely different.
Okay. And if I go to the same shop and buy a fridge, it will still be part of the first transaction style, but it'll have its own transaction code.
Chord, yes,
Oh,
exactly,
got it.
absolutely right, yes. So basically you identify different types of transaction styles. So one
Mhm.
transaction style can be a simple leave management,
Yeah.
another can be a salary processing,
Mhm.
another can
Okay.
be a return of goods.
Okay.
Right, so you keep on adding different transaction styles, and transaction styles are basically nothing but a set of, what is an organization? Organization is basically a set of different team interacting in a
Mhm.
certain way at different snapshot of time to make
Okay.
things done, right?
Yeah.
And that is where a transaction style is a collection of we call it as states.
Yes.
Okay. One transaction style is made up of multiple states.
Multiple states. So if you
Yeah.
see,
Great.
to make a transaction happen, right, different people in an organization come
Mhm.
together,
Yeah.
right, and what is an organization really interested in is that they identified, I mean, the whole world, if you see, is just a collection of properties, right? So
Mhm.
different, which we call it as variables, right?
Yeah.
So as a human being, just like a friend, between one human being to another human being, we identify them based on the values of those properties which they hold,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
is the what is my retina, value of the retina? What is my
Mhm.
the dimension of my what is my height, what is my weight,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth, right? With all the features, you can
Mhm.
just see them as this collection of properties.
Yeah.
You can define and add some value to it, and those
Mhm.
collection of properties makes you unique,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
between one individual to another individual.
Mhm.
Similarly, in a business, right, and these states are continuously changing, right? We our body is going through transitions every second,
Yeah.
and we know from science that every 5 years we are not the same person as what we have been 5 years
Mhm.
back, right? Because the cell completely keeps on degenerating, and the new cell keeps on coming from that perspective. So similarly, if when it comes to a business, what happens in the business? The business is basically a set of properties which they collectively call, and they say that, okay, whenever that events, right, a set of property,
Mhm.
for example, it can be, I can give make an alert system, right?
Yeah.
An alerting system that in my server room, if the temperature goes beyond 40 degrees Celsius,
Mhm.
right, an admin team or the infrastructure team needs to be alerted.
Yeah.
So those servers are there, the temperature are being noted every second, right?
Mhm.
So but what time they are interested, the moment this becomes 40 degrees Celsius,
Mhm.
right, this collection of those properties on that particular which server and all, that collection set of properties, we call it as a state. A particular state has achieved.
Okay.
State is always there, right? But
Mhm.
Yeah.
what you are interested in is a
When
collection
the
of a
state
state.
changes.
Yes, a collection of a state when it achieves a certain value
Certain threshold.
altogether.
Mhm.
Yes,
For
that is where you
example,
are interested.
in the asset management system, first stage is where the employee requests for a device. Second stage is when the manager approves for it.
Approves.
Third stage is
Yes,
when the IT manager approves. Fourth stage is when the finance side approves. So it's the
exactly.
same transaction style that goes through different states.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
different states. So what you are interested in is the parties, you have people, right? You have
Mhm.
hired for a certain job,
Mhm.
right? And those people are going to perform. The moment you identify that the interest of those properties changes between one role to another
Mhm.
role, you identify, separate it out and segregate into different
Different
states.
states.
Okay.
So
So
with
yes.
in the same transaction style, different states can have different forms if we think of it from a VCA perspective.
Yes, because in order to complete a certain transaction, you
Mhm.
need different people, and
Yeah,
since
yeah,
they are in different roles, they are not doing exactly the same job,
same thing. Mhm.
right? Plus the
Mhm.
data sensitivity may be different. When it comes to, you can have one finance guy who may approve somewhere, right?
Yeah,
So finance guy may as well like to see the financial data, but it
yeah,
doesn't make sense to show that data to the manager or
employee.
maybe to an
Mhm.
admin at least.
Okay,
Mhm.
Right.
got
So
Yeah.
so as it moves and depending upon what kind of role they are in, right?
it.
There can be another state maybe for the helping staff to clean their area, right?
Mhm.
So for them, you may like to give a form which is more readable to them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
more friendly to them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
depending upon the role, what those roles are, your
Mhm.
design of the forms can be completely different,
Okay.
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, the
So
doubt I had for this was because there is in this asset purchase one, there is also a quotation thing to do, right? To get a quote
yes,
from an external vendor. So that
yes,
will still be part of the same transaction. It will be its own state.
yes. So there are different now methodologies, right? This is
Mhm.
another system, another problem which usually within the software system people encounter is
Mhm.
that they wire it up like this. They go till
Mhm.
here, and then at a certain stage, they will have some decision making,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And they loop through that, okay,
Yeah.
go back here again.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And this looping becomes, over a period of a business
Yeah.
process, it becomes so complex, right? That to manage it, or for making a small change, it has to go through so much of regression that it
Yeah.
takes 3 weeks to even months to
Mhm.
achieve that small
People don't
change.
change at most points of time.
Yes, yes, and if yeah, because they really see that changing it is going to involve a lot of cost, and I
Yeah.
will not have I have to bear with a lot of other errors, right,
Mhm.
or other
Yeah.
scenarios which can come out of it.
So
So
that's
so
what they say
this
for air traffic control systems, right? No one's going to change anything there, but it's such an old and clunky system.
correct.
Yeah.
So what happens here is that the involvement of those business decisions and the loops which goes
Mhm.
through becomes very challenging, and
Yeah.
and one such method of solving it is that do not design a system which will have a loop in the same TS.
Okay.
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 Okay, so we know that a quotation, right? A
Mhm.
quotation undergoes through many negotiations.
Yeah.
So we call that quotation as a separate process.
Mhm.
One TS itself for quotation, dedicated for.
Okay.
Mhm.
And if you have to, if this quotation doesn't work, cancel and start a new one,
Mhm.
Okay.
right? Rather than looping through. He
Okay.
doesn't want, and then you again loop through and start doing those
So
changes.
each is a
Don't do that.
separate transaction.
Yes. So the basic idea is wherever there is a loop, right?
Mhm.
Break that in a TS.
Okay. Got
Okay.
it. Got it.
So
Okay, so that's a
same
fundamental
for the
principle.
recruitment. If we rejected one candidate, then we have to make it that as a new transaction, right? They don't go
Yes.
back. Okay.
Yeah, you don't go back.
Okay. new recruitment will be the same employee resume will be there, but still we have to make it as a next transaction.
Yes. So the basic philosophy, the basic design principle here is that, and that is more of a what do you call, the uh, the experience which comes here, right? In terms of how you define and manage your states, you can technically do that, with all those loops, but that is not going to be maintainable, and that is not something which you can, make it error free, because you will have to do a lot of due diligence, and that is not very natural, because your end users are not the IT engineers who are going to use it.
Yeah.
Always remember that the end users do not want any complexity. If you want a usage of your system, you need to have a system, the interface, which is very simple. And the natural system is that, something didn't work, you just cancel it and start a new one. That's the easiest one.
Okay.
So the one principle is that wherever there is a loop, don't put that loop in that, you handle it with the states and all. You just handle it with start a new transaction altogether. Okay. So we saw that TS is a collection of states, right? And within that TS, you will see that when you are configuring those states, there is something called context.
Yeah.
Context is just a collection of same types of a TS can have maybe 20 or 30 states, right? For more complex systems, wherever there is a huge number of people involved,
Intermediate
right?
states and
Yes.
people.
So in that case, the logical grouping of certain states, we call it as a context, and that is more from the visual standpoint. So that tomorrow, if you are listing it out, you can visually show that these set of states are all collected, are all part of one visual drawings, right? And how it is progressing, that you can show it up. So that's just a logical grouping of that states within that, and then you have categories and other things, right? You will see there. So those are just again a visual grouping to put icons, so that visually user can see that in a quick snapshot as what is happening where. So the key concept is that every set of style is basically a new TS, and within that we are interested in different parties or roles coming together to perform a certain set of operations when those collection of properties achieve a certain state, right? And those states is where uh, we uh, uh, we identify those states as, the states can be of multiple types, right? Sometimes the states you don't need any human intervention. You want some data entry to happen at that point of time. You want to send an email only, right? Send some WhatsApp messages only. So you just configure it as a script state.
Yeah.
So it can be a script state. Some states, most of the times is human dependent. So wherever there is a human dependency, you call it as a human state, configure it as a human state. Sometimes those states can be repeatable state in case of a human. So you complete it, and then you again want to have another instance of that state, especially when it comes to uh, in some cases you may have that you want to complete, you are filling up some data, right, one at a time. So until that whole inventory is done, or until that whole list is done, you keep on looping through. You complete one at a time, complete one until the whole list ends, then until then you keep on looping through one by one. So that can be one repeatable type of state. Another is a timer state, right, in which you want that, after a certain, so EMI collection, for example, or EMI reminders, right? Or it can be anything else, wherein you can configure that state to repeat after a certain interval of time. Every first week of a month, I need that state, to again happen. So you know in advance. So those timer states are there as part of a property, and you can configure it. So that's the whole thing, right? So now the another point here is that we saw that there is a CC between F1 and F2, and then we saw that there is a TC.
Transactions.
Now, in one transaction, you can have multiple
States,
yes, not multiple states. In one TC,
transitions.
you can have multiple products which you may buy.
Okay.
We call it as unit. You call it as unit costs. Why? Because you want a complete control. So you have gone to a shop where you have bought some 10 items, right? And some out of those 10 items, some items may have some warranties, may have some repair things which is out free, right? May have some, so for example, you have bought a mobile phone, right? And mobile phone may be uniquely identified, and you may like a repair services on that, or it may have some warranties. So on a transaction, we identify within that transaction the every single product which is identifiable. So we create unit codes there to uniquely identify. So there the products or services can be of two types again, right? One is which is uniquely identifiable. For example, mobile phone. Every mobile phone will have its own IMEI number, right? And the serial number. Similarly, the laptop may have its own ID to identify that particular laptop versus another laptop. Okay, and similarly, there can be other ones which can be a loose items. For example, 1 kg of apple, right? Or 2 kg of potatoes, right? So you can't really identify between one potato to another potato. So as a whole box, when you buy, so that so the unit code we create, which is basically identifying a particular product at a unit level. Okay, so if it's a mobile phone, so you will have a serial number and some IMEI number which can uniquely identify that mobile phone only. When it's a 2 kg potato, it's a collection of 2 kg potato which make it unique. And if you want to return, you can't return one potato with another. You have to return that whole thing together, if at all return policy is there. For a MacBook, you can do a return. So basically, so this is the complete thing. So from your relationship to your transaction to your unit, this is one such one unit which makes up the entire system.
So unit is basically the things that we have in our line hierarchy.
Okay, so we introduce the concept of a front, we introduce the concept of a connection card, CC. Now what we say here, anything which is transacted again, from the monetary perspective, right? So there can be two things. One is your service. What do you sell here? Either your service or your products, goods, right? So these are the only two things which gets exchanged as part of a business transaction, where monetary things comes in. So we call this as a line in general terms. So why we call line? One of the analogy is that you can imagine it a river stream, right? The small rivers, collects from different places, right? Merge into a bigger river, and these bigger rivers again come from different places and merge into a maybe an ocean or so, right? So the entire world also works in a similar way. The businesses are made of basically one business basically buys those raw materials from different smaller businesses, right? And these businesses, they produce an output, right? And those outputs, like a similar business again, is consumed by a possibly another business, which basically consumes it and again produces a value which again is taken by another business, right? And individuals. So that is how the whole stream of values flows in the ecosystem of our world, right? So and that's why we take that inspiration, from that river stream, and we call in general as a line. That basically, so businesses are nothing but they exchange lines, and that's where we configure those. So line can be categorized, right, into groups, into hierarchies within a business, and to group it, we call it as a hierarchy.
Okay.
So in general, you basically line is to further group it into different sections. You create hierarchies, and that hierarchy is basically just to help businesses create a store for themselves, an online store, just like an e-commerce site, where based on those hierarchies, how they categorize those products and services, that can be, we can put it on an e-commerce site on the left hand side. So if this business chooses to have their own website in which they want to publish their products and services, then how do they categorize it? And that is where the line hierarchy comes in play. So line hierarchy is just a accessory, or a helper thing which helps those products and services to be grouped.
So if I were to ask this, for example, INOR is something that business one, that's the first circle that you have three circles there, right? INOR is given to business one. Business one produces, say, a small nut or screw that is given to business two. Business two
Yes.
uses that to make a motor, which is then given to business three, who puts it in a, say, mixie.
Yes.
Okay. So then how would that fit into a line hierarchy?
Okay, so the line hierarchy, the business, so the line hierarchy, the what will fit in across if you go navigate across system is the basically the chords.
Mhm.
Okay, in which the within a transaction and within the, if you identify a chord which is an instance of a line, so the unit chord is nothing but a instance of a line. It identifies which product or service has been sold, and that is also given a unit chord ID. Okay, so one
Okay.
unit chord, this unit chord, the nut which is created here is sold here, and then that again nut is being used in some motor, and that
Mhm.
motor is again sold into. So that nut, the unit chord ID, which is universal again,
Mhm.
you identify unique. One is a
Mhm.
local which is identified here,
Yeah.
and the moment is it goes out, that
Mhm.
unit chord is assigned a universal ID as well. So
Mhm.
that unit chord, some failure happens, right?
Mhm.
At a certain stage, you can exactly identify this unit code, how it has been transacted from this business to this business to this business.
Business.
You can
Okay.
identify and go to the core of it. Uh, now unit code is basically a function of line, and it's the line which basically is being sold. Now for the consumers of this business, if they want to filter some things, right, they have so many products and services, they want to filter,
Mhm.
just like an Amazon site, for example. If you
Mhm.
go and on the left hand side you say that electronic accessories,
Yeah.
okay, or you search for a particular group, kitchen appliances, right? So similarly, a business can categorize for an easy navigation of their products within their ecosystem, and that's where we categorize it with a line hierarchy. So the hierarchies can go like, electronic appliances,
Mhm.
for example, right? Within electronic appliances, you can have multiple such categories. One category can be your mobile,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? Another category can be your you can
Kitchen
your
appliance.
kitchen, like microwave, oven, or so,
Yeah.
household items. Another category can be your digital boxes, right? And so on and so forth. So these hierarchies as how you would like within the system to be created for your end users, for your employees, to have a quick access of from the filtering criteria perspective, because you may be dealing into 20,000 different lines, right? If you just dump the lines, right, and so it will be very difficult for anybody to navigate through or filter to a particular search a particular product. So for
Okay.
that, for your end consumers, basically employee or even the customers, if you want to further categorize it, then you can create different hierarchies within that, so that it will be visible. So if you go to the VC on the stores tab, and then finally we are doing for some of the customers, not all customers will open it to the to their end customers, but there are retail companies who would like to open it up. For them, we use these line hierarchies. For others, you can just have a default line hierarchy and you can dump everything in the same place. But if you want to be very specific in terms of categorizing your goods and services, you can create those hierarchies here. And that is why to create a line, right? So when we create a line again, so the line is made up of multiple things, right? So when we say a particular service, we say that most of the world, if you see from the business community perspective, there are very less manufacturer in terms of ratios, right? There are manufacturing companies, and then there are lot of trading companies, right?
Yeah.
Which to take those products, buy it from a manufacturer and sell it to others. That is the majority.
Yeah.
Correct. So, so when you are trading anything, say for example, a particular brand, so we always identify a manufacturer. So we start from that a line. If you have to think from the universal standpoint, right? So it's a Ashirwad Atta, right? So the Ashirwad Atta is there are different traders, businesses who are selling that Ashirwad Atta, but there is only one manufacturer of that Ashirwad Atta, which is ITC. Okay, so first we do here is that we identify a line which how we see it universally, so that we can identify the manufacturer, and that is where we create a universal line. And in a universal line, that is something which is universally unique, which identifies a manufacturer, who is the manufacturer of it. And then you further qualify within your system that what are the variants of it, right? And what are the what do you call? What are the hierarchy of that? Right? If you want to create a hierarchy, if not a universal hierarchy within your business, you may like to categorize. So that is how we identify the universal line. Now, once the line or a product or a service is identified, what you do here is you do two things, right? You either buy it, you first buy it, and then you sell it, right? So you buy at a certain price and then you sell at a certain price, and you maintain inventories. And when you sell it and when you buy it, you may buy it at different prices also.
Yeah.
Right? Because one vendor might be, you may buy some of the things at a wholesaler, right? Or from a distributor or directly from a manufacturer. You may get a different behavior altogether. And when you sometimes, you don't have right stock and you buy it from your another business next door, right? So that your customer, you don't lose him. So you buy at maybe at a higher price. So the same universal line, as and when they buy at different from different levels, the behavior of that line, if at all that changes. So we call that this is a buy line, which is this buy line, you can relate it with a particular front, or you can create a altogether different custom line out of it. So we have two concepts. One is the universal line, and I'll just take that another page here so that you are more clear. So so when you are buying, so you identify that this is my universal line. I haven't talked about transaction as of now. So I may just maybe buying it from one, so I will call it as a custom line. So the moment I qualify that universal line that it is of a buy or a sell behavior. Okay. So the moment I qualify, it becomes a custom line.
Yeah.
Okay. And this custom line, I can say that I have a buyer, right? My product, I'm selling it to someone, right? I may have a special pricing for him, for that customer, because they are basically my regular customers, and they are giving my primary revenue source, right? So I may say that, okay, this is this custom line I can create from the same universal line as a one set of line. Another, from the same universal line, I can still create another custom line, which is again a cell, but my audience is different. Okay, because my transaction on that custom line may be completely different versus the way I do transaction with this type of customers. Okay, so this flexibility, you get it. with the VCA, that
Oh.
you can define at a line level itself how your behavior of transaction style is going to happen for this custom line versus this.
Okay.
Another advantage, which is very important to have this qualification is a system is of no value unless it is integrated with a finance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you can't handle a finance, if you can't do your maths in terms of generating the ledgers, right, generating the journal entries, creating the balance sheet out of it, the trial balance, and then ultimately reporting it to the end of year, what are your profits and everything, right? The entire system is of no value because it doesn't solve, it really doesn't give you a picture of how you are doing on a particular product or how you are doing as a business. And that is why, the buying and selling behavior needs to be separated out.
Okay.
Okay, and you basically put your accounting at a buy level differently, your cost of goods, how you calculate versus how you sell, and then how you manage your returns and other things becomes completely different. And that is where, that these segregating these will help eventually further on that. So the finance, once it comes to that, so that usually we are not doing as part of the training, because that is again a package thing which just sits as a template on all of this if you follow these structures everywhere.
Okay, so I just to make this whole thing, whether we got it right, both of us.
Yes.
So let's imagine there's a supermarket. The supermarket sells 2,000 different things.
Yes.
So each product they sell, for example, a shampoo, a particular shampoo like yellow color Sunsilk shampoo, is a universal line, or is shampoo a universal line?
No, that the moment you identify the manufacturer, right?
Okay,
So the Sunsilk is manufactured by P&G, right?
okay.
For example, right? I'm not sure if the P&G is the, but if the moment you identify who is the manufacturer, because for that Sunsilk you can't have two manufacturers.
Yeah.
So whether you go to this business or that business, the manufacturer remains same.
Okay.
So that's where we call it as a universal line, because remember that we are talking in terms of painting the entire world businesses into one single thing.
Okay.
Okay, so the structure should be so convenient that if you have to, and we'll see in that presentation shortly, that if you have to exchange across businesses, right, the common structure, your structure right at the beginning needs to be very standard, very natural, rather, rather than enforcing any standards, it has to be natural the way it is. And that's where we call it as a universal line. The universally, it is something which can be identified.
Okay, so P&G, Johnson and Johnson, Hindustan Lever, these are all the universal lines.
These are the fronts.
The manufacturers.
These are the manufacturers. These are the fronts which manufacture different products. And those products, basically, when we register, right, we also identify that who is the manufacturer of that.
Yeah.
Right. So the product which you register, for example, the Sunsilk, right? That Sunsilk may come in different variants.
Yeah.
Right. So all the variants which you register, so Sunsilk with let's say 30 ml pouch, right? Which then it may be 200 ml bottle, right? So all the variants of it, you register it, and these are the lines, your universal lines.
Okay, each variant is a separate universal line. So
yes,
if there is, for example, yellow Sunsilk 300 ml, that will be one universal line.
One universal
Yellow
line.
Sunsilk 20 ml will be another universal line.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And how I choose to organize my products, like maybe by aisle they are, or maybe by category, that forms my line hierarchy.
That forms, and that is your decision as how you want your customers or
that
your
is something
consumers
internally the customer can discuss with you and form their own line hierarchy.
Exactly.
Then once I have a universal line, with each product, I can choose either to buy it, I can choose either to sell it, or I can choose to buy it and sell it, or produce it and sell it.
Yes, if you are using a VCA and you are a manufacturer, so you may basically maybe buying the raw materials to make it, but the Sunsilk in a PNG will be a produce line, and then you
Yeah,
will
it will
sell
be
it.
produce and sell. So for
Sell.
each of those, I will create custom lines.
Yes, for each of this, you will create a custom line. And when you
Okay.
create a custom line, the another important thing uh, here is that you may choose to sell it at different packaging hierarchies, right? For example, you may be selling it as, so for example, PNG will never sell it in a loose one Sunsilk, right?
One sachet,
Right?
yeah.
They may sell it at a whole box level,
Box,
right?
yeah.
Or maybe at a collection of those boxes, which they call it as, I don't remember that name, pallet, right? The complete pallet level.
Yeah.
So it depends. So the packaging hierarchy is what comes when you actually start thinking in terms of buy and sell. So when you are selling, I may buy it at a box level, but I may sell it as a retail in retails in loose items.
Okay. So for
Right.
example, my supermarket buys can only get one full box of Sunsilk from PNG. So
Yes.
that is my okay,
One
and
custom
but
line.
I can sell it as
That is
one
a
each.
One.
yes. So what they will do is they will create a custom line, and in a custom line, when you create, we ask for a packaging hierarchy,
Okay.
right? That packaging hierarchy, they will say that this is my custom line of a buy type, and I'm buying it from, let's say, a distributor or directly from PNG, right? And so let's take two example. One, he is buying from distributor, right? Another, he is buying from directly PNG. So the PNG is selling only at a pallet level. So which
Yes.
means always a box of 10. So he will create a custom line, right, for Sunsilk, which will be at a packaging hierarchy of pallet level, and then he
Okay.
will buy one from distributor, right, which will be at a box level.
Box level. Okay.
So there
So
will be
for
two custom
okay.
lines.
So for example, for my Sunsilk shampoo, I can have different buy lines, multiple buy lines, and multiple sell lines.
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay. If I want to say do buy one, get one free, that will be one sell line and just sell it at cost, or that will be one sell line and 50% discount, that will be one sell line. Is that how it will be?
Okay, so when it comes to really talking about the transaction behavior, you handle it at a transaction level.
Okay, okay,
Line
okay.
is really not coming in picture when you say that what discount you are going to give.
Okay, okay, okay. It is just the package thing,
Yeah,
basically.
packaging
Yes.
thing and the
The unit,
behavior.
what you consider
Yes,
as a single unit.
yes.
Okay, all right.
Discounting and all, you mostly manage
That
it
is
at a transaction
transaction.
level,
Okay,
but
got
you
it,
are
got it.
open, people may just do it at, if you have a good picture and you think that you can handle, see it, these, we are not really enforcing people, right? Product is all
Yeah.
independent, just like a
Okay.
database table. You can do whatever you want to do. So
So,
I have seen people managing in different ways also.
so basically, if I want to put data into the custom lines or anywhere, I will create a transaction style for it and then enter.
Yeah, so the transaction style, if you see, transaction style is something which you always, link with something, right? When you say the style has to be of something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it can be of a line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically that means that you are going to basically exchange goods, and you are basically buying and selling behavior is what you are governing with a transaction style for a particular product or service. Or transaction style can be of a particular relationship,
Okay.
right? You want to be you want to hire a particular employee, you want to manage a particular supplier with terms and agreements, right? You want to become empaneled with a particular with a company, right? You want to complete some legal, so the transaction style will always, you will be asked as where you want to identify what you are trying to identify. The moment you create a transaction style, you will see that you have got some radio buttons out there, right? And it asks you that it is going to be for a line or for a relationship or for another TS,
Yeah.
right? So or for a unit code. What can happen is that you want that transactional behavior of a return item. On a transaction, you may buy certain items, right? 20 items, but on a particular laptop only, you are only giving a return. policy,
Yeah.
right? So you will be telling that unit code, it will be available on a unit code. That means unit code is an instance of a line. So whenever something is sold at a laptop level, that is where you will get as an action as a transaction style, which you are creating and marking as a unit code. You may have some cancellation policy. So you are taking some insurance policy, and in the before you finalize, you want to cancel that option. So you may have a TS to TS mapping. So policy is one thing, and under that policy you create another TS, which will be the cancellation TS.
Mhm.
Right. So that is all wiring, basically how visually you want to present it. And it will all make sense once you start getting
Working.
so start working on it. These are very fixed things, which is thought of in a very natural way, and that is how things work, right? So it will solve most of your problems. Okay, so that is what, and so basically you have only three concepts which builds up the entire business system in VCA. One is the front, another in general chord, and then the lines.
And
Chord has, again, we call, there is a concept called fractal. So the fractal is, again, a very much is a term which is used a lot by the people who are interested in mathematics, right? So fractal, basically, what it says is that for anything, to scale, you need to have fractal is basically a combination of two terms. One is repeatability, uh, a structure which can repeat itself, and another is the scalability, right? So if you see the entire nature, uh, uh, the trees and all, each of them which can scale has always a repeatable unit, just like our cells, right?
yeah.
The neurons, it repeats itself. So any system, if you have to build so that it can scale infinitely, it should be fractal in nature, right? So for fractality, the key point here is that it should have a repeatable structure, and that repeatable structure is this chord. Okay. And if you have a repeatable structure, it can scale, and that is why we call it as a fractal intelligence also. So VCA is based on a fractal intelligence. uh, um, so the in all, and that fractal structure is our chord, and just like a tree, which you can have its root and then branch, and then it's finally leaves where you have got. So this is your connection chord, this can be your TC. You can imagine that those fruits and other things as UCs here. So this is your one single unit of fractal, which repeats itself to build the entire business system, be it a hospital, be it any. Basically, it's a very much agnostic in terms of the business vertical.
Okay.
Okay.
Something that is repeatable, and when it repeats, it also scales.
Yes. Yes. So I covered up all the core concepts in terms of what we use. Because every time you talk about VCA, you will always talk in terms of front chords and lines and TS.
Yeah, so these were separate
Yeah.
concepts that we had done.
Yes. Yes, and it will make more sense because you already know. If I would
Yeah.
have done right up front, you would have not
Yeah,
remembered
it would not
everything.
have helped.
So you have now questions actually. So it will become easier to catch up on those things. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll come back to the presentation. I think let's see if we can move on that. So. Okay, so the plasticity, right? When we say the push, the flexibility of expanding, right? So if you see the chord, if the chord is fixed in its size and right from the beginning, then the ability to capture more transactions in that, right, on that chord will become very difficult. So the plasticity is one key thing which the way the neuron works, right? So when you meet for the first time, when you learn something for the first time, your neuron is very small, right? And
Yeah.
as and when you keep adding your knowledge on top of that context, right? So every time you learn a new thing, right, a new type of neuron is created in your system.
Mhm.
And that neuron keeps on expanding and it keeps on growing, and it starts making new connections with new neurons and make up a complete new context out of it. And that's why the plasticity is very important. And then the fractality, which we just said. So the from the VCA perspective, or from the pushcord perspective, it should have and that's how that whole pushcord comes together, from the analogy standpoint, that it has the ability to be flexible. It is very plastic in nature. It can accommodate itself to expand as and when the transaction life cycle grows. And then the cord in itself is very inherently fractal in nature. That makes together the basic building block of the entire system.
Mhm.
So give me a second here. All right. So let's see here. This is just we talked about a few minutes back, right? So the businesses, it is just a comparison of the existing business ecosystem as of now. You have those ERPs, BPMs, team chats, mail client, all the softwares which businesses acquire over a period of time. And all of these has its own proprietary structures within itself, which really make it very incompatible. So one software doesn't talk to another software, whereas when it comes to the human brain, it just makes sense out of all. So it's very coherent, basically, to make a sense of so that you can make a decision. You should have an ability, the system should have an ability to take a call based on the entire context. So your transaction might have undergone some data may be spread here, some data may be spread here, and so on. So if you have to make a decision, if you miss out one key thing, right? So he might have talk to you over phone that I need you are going to a resort and you want to book a particular a specific additional bed or something for your kids, right? And the guy who is preparing it doesn't really see that communication. Then you are going to get angry that I have asked so many times, why you are not able to do that. Similarly in business, and it happens quite often, that the
Yeah.
decisions are made based on a very narrow a subset of data as part of the transaction, even though they have data is spread across different systems. That is one of the major challenge when it comes to neurons. It is we will see here how it works within the neuron. We will deep dive a bit more. So the neuron has its own capability, and just like our cord structure, we have three parts making it all together: the CC, TC, and UC. Similarly, the neurons basically connects the sensory, relay, and motor neurons basically connects and combine together to make a decision on it. So I'll just navigate here, and you can
Mhm.
stop me if you want anywhere to talk more on that. So you're so that is what we are talking about, right? So once you have a specific within the organization, also you have the same structure. Outside the organization also you have the same structure, and it's the cord which basically gets exchanged from one business to another business in the entire business ecosystem, which makes the whole world connected from the ecosystem standpoint.
So basically, the portion inside the brain is your business, and everything outside is other people you interact with.
Other people we interact with, and that those people can also have the similar structures out here.
Okay.
So the
Oh, all
structures
right, all
becomes
right.
very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So basically what we are envisioning is in the future, all businesses who use VCA and all customers who use, basically all businesses and customers who use VCA will have a one-stop place where they can see everything that is going on within their
Yes, as of now,
ecosystem
there is
and their
no,
interactions with others.
yes, as of now, the exchange of information across businesses is very complex.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And not even the 1% of the businesses interact
Mhm.
in exchanging their, I can have multiple suppliers, right? I can have customers who are B2B customers, but exchanging data is very limited with them. And it's not live system. That is because both of them have their own, even the same ERP system, they may use SAP and
Yeah,
I may
yeah.
use Microsoft Dynamics. They don't talk to each other. And forget about, both of them, even if they have the Microsoft Dynamics or both of them have SAP outside of these do not talk to each other.
Yeah, that was my question. So I don't know much about SAP. So SAP, if two companies have SAP, their SAP instances cannot talk to each other, right?
They can't talk to each other.
Yeah, but in VCA, if you both have VCA, then you can actually talk. So for example, me and my vendor have VCA, then all our interactions we can view on VCA, on Pushcord.
Yes, and they can have their own VCA, I can have their own VCA, they can have a different set of TS, but the
Mhm.
basic building block is same.
Same. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
The
Yeah.
structure is same. So the data communication can happen very easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is what is Pushcord. That communication that I can see is also part of my Pushcord, even though it's with another business.
Yes, that so push. It's all push code actually.
Mhm.
It's just internally right from beginning.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
have
yeah.
been calling it, and you can't really again change it. So that's how they
Mhm.
have been identifying. So it's a long word calling push code business and push code people internally within us. So we
Mhm.
call it as a VCA. That's the only
Okay.
difference. But it's push
Okay.
code actually. The
Got it.
concept is same. So, yeah, so that's the key part, right? So your the way you are, so the reason why two people connect is because of the neuron, right? The
Mhm.
structures are same, and
Yeah.
that's why people can connect easily. People can understand each other's ideas, very well. So those neurons helps together. So the cords in the business is going to be the blocks which can help connect businesses. So.
Basically, businesses who use VCA are going to be like a set of businesses who speak the same language.
Yes, and plus we are also pitching VCA as a system. So if you have, let's say, a 30 different systems, which is making your business as of today,
Mhm.
isolated system, we are pitching VCA
Mhm.
as a additional 31st system, which can act like a ball bearing for
Okay.
rest of the 30 systems as well.
Oh.
Okay, because VCA is if rest of the 30 system can start interacting with just one VCA, if they plug in their other 30 systems with each of them with a VCA, then VCA can become a ball bearing, and it can help rest of the 30 systems also to talk to each other.
So that means for example, if I'm using Salesforce,
Yes.
so will my
Yes.
Salesforce, can VCA plug into my Salesforce?
Yes. So VCA is also, we are working together. We have within the VCA, we have states and the types of states. You will
Mhm.
see here the ingestion propulsion kind of a thing, which
Mhm.
can ingest any type of data and which can propel any kind of data.
Okay.
So
So
if you
basically,
can,
I call Salesforce's APIs, get that data, and then
you
VCA
put
sits
it
on
in the
top.
cord structure, and then you are
Mhm.
unified now.
Okay.
Oh,
And the rest of the people can now, so and that's where we call it as it's a ball bearing, right? It helps the entire
Oh.
system to work in coherence from there on. So the
Oh.
entire, it's very impractical for any business who has invested in billions, right, or possibly in millions in different 20 systems, and out of nowhere, they just start using VCA, scrapping everything. That is simply not possible. And that is
Yeah.
where we put VCA. VCA helps them in terms of acting as a system which can unify their entire data, and then they can build everything, as a on top of that VCA, or at least or see a unified picture of everything. All right.
Yeah. So, for example, if I was working for a university, we have a separate system for taking tests, separate system for curriculum management, second separate system for admissions, and
Yes.
separate system for payroll. So I can adopt VCA, and VCA will talk to all of these systems
Yes.
and give me a unified view. For example, if I'm the vice chancellor, I can see all the different things in a single interface.
Yes, you can have a huge
But my
dashboard where,
underlying
yes,
systems work as they were always working.
exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So those businesses who are doing it right from scratch, the new businesses or those
Mhm.
businesses who are ready to replace, we are doing it for some of the customers who are,
Mhm.
who have yearly licenses and they are fed up of it because that system is not flexible,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They can't achieve what they want to achieve
Mhm.
with those systems. So they want to basically decommission it and adopt VCA. So VCA is
Mhm.
there as well to help them out, and VCA is
Mhm.
there where you have multi-million dollars investment and you just want to unify the whole
A
data so
glue
that
to
you can
stick
start
it all
exchange.
together.
Yes.
Okay. So if we do a glue kind of or a ball bearing kind of role, even then we have to create all the transaction styles and everything and just
Yes.
consume their data and
Yes.
present it.
Yes.
Okay.
So for unification, you need to create those TSs.
Mhm.
Okay, so you might have seen this the same thing is structural parallel, just so you might have seen this. This is any chord if you have gone through that system. So this is the on the top. If you go to the chords page,
Mhm.
you will see that relationships,
Yeah, yeah,
a
the icon.
relationship level aggregation, and then within that TC level aggregation, and then the multiple units within that.
Yes.
So this is again talking about the agnostic nature of the complete neural cords. We have the one of the first challenges which we took over is rather than scaling VCA to be profitable, we took up projects in each of these industries, so that we can
Mhm.
prove the agnostic nature of the VCA and adapt VCA in terms of anything which we might have missed, or to certify that a VCA is something the same structure can solve the entire types of businesses which is available, and that is what we did, right? So this is now proven. We have done it for manufacturing, we have done it for hospitals, right? We have done it for pharmaceuticals, constructions, almost everywhere we have done it except couple of them because we didn't had that reach. So all rest of them is all done here.
Okay.
So some of the readouts here, if you want to read, I'll just pause for a couple of minutes. And this is a huge thing, right? We have the with VCA, we are working on for individual industry verticals templates, right? Ready-made templates, which on a click of a button, you can have the entire system presented. You don't have
Mhm.
to even work on building forms or dragging and dropping. From there on, if you want to further change anything, it's just a drag and drop. So for every single business vertical, as and when we are doing, we are making a generic product out of it, of this platform as well. So for example, point of sale solution in retail outlet, right?
Mhm.
Point of sale system is very common, right? They
Yeah.
just scan it and then they print the bill. So that those systems, similarly in a hospital, pharmacy and all, in pharmacy or inpatient registration, outpatient, for a hospital, the more or less the features remain same. So the implementation team is also working on, once they are ready with the product, we are working on, from the product team perspective, we are working on to further package it up, so that you don't have to, every time a hospital comes, you don't have to build everything from scratch. Whole system will be there for you, and now whatever changes is required, you just do those changes.
Oh,
And once you have all those videos and audios as a learning available to the customers on the YouTube, right? So they themselves, they may not have to engage us, right? Or they may engage us only for a support or for anything which they can't do. So the time to market will be very less for adopting any new change. The cost becomes very less. Uh, uh, you don't have to. The whole idea of having a IT team is gone now. You don't need a
okay.
software developer, expensive software developers to build your system, which
Mhm.
makes things very affordable for the businesses. And that's where we say that it's just like a PCO business. Those Amazons in every vertical, it's an opportunistic goal as of now, wherein the businesses can't really build a system like Amazon or e-commerce website like
Yes.
Amazon, who has invested millions of dollars there. But with this, everybody can have their own system out there, and with Pushcord in place, you can Pushcord can become a huge marketplace,
So it becomes a
uh,
global marketplace.
global marketplace for our businesses. Uh, so that's the whole idea here.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a deep dive in terms of how a cord, the how a cord looks like as compared to the neurons, because uh, we take a very we have taken a lot of contemporary research which has been done on the neurons and how neuron works. So if you are interested, I can share some of the neuron videos also
Sure.
to help things out. So neuron, if you see, so a lot of times people confuse with, is it a ANN algorithm which we are automating, but it's not. ANN, again, a neural network is a very old concept, and that is very limited in nature. We are nowhere close to the concept of, it's a completely different concept. It's just that, ANN is being taken over, and it's so you can't use it, and people confuse it, right? But it's not the way ANN is built is not the way neuron works actually. So neuron, if you see with the contemporary research, every neuron has its own database in itself. So
Mhm.
and it has its own, the nuclei basically really stores information about how it will connect, which type of neurons it will connect. So you might have seen books, right? Learn things in 28 days, right? So there is a very important very famous rather research which was done by one of the contemporary psychiatrists, the psychologist basically. So what he termed a term called blast. Okay, and what he says is that he was working on a de-addiction program. Okay, so he says that the term blast, basically he says that B stands for boredom, L stands for loneliness, A stands for anger, S for stress, and T for tiredness. What he said is that these are the key triggering points in the human psychology when they get into the addiction mechanism, right? So if somebody is addicted to, let's say, smoking a lot, right? So he was basically studying that at what time, even after telling, and he understands that he has to, it's not good for his health, what triggers it? He says that these are the 5 events which triggers, if he is stressed, okay, chalo sotta maar ke aate hain, like that. Right. So if he is tired or loneliness, he doesn't have anything. So these are the 5 basic areas which triggers them for a particular addiction. And if you can manage it, right, to manage it, he said that, okay, so the first time when you smoke, or first time you get into any type of addiction, the neurons, the habit making is, the roots of it, or the stem of it, is very weak. As you keep on doing the same things, your neurons, becomes more stronger and stronger. It makes the wiring, with the other neurons more and more stronger. So if you have to if you have to make yourself de-addicted, right, the first thing which you have to do is, you have to, each of these events which he said that is a invoking event, you need to do something else. And once you start doing something else, right, for example, the moment you are lonely, you go out for a jog. Okay, that, okay, I'll go and jog, and I'll probably go somewhere, meet someone else. So the moment you start doing, you will start building a new habit, and those neurons will be initially weak. And as you keep on doing it, usually it takes a month or so to build a habit. Sometimes people call it as 40 days. Those are again being countered. And so basically 28 to 40 days is when people say that, your first habit builds on. And that's why you will say that a lot of books you will see, learn in 28 days, learn in 30 days, learn in 40. They all, so making any habit, it starts. Now you have to, now what he said is that you will build that neurons, but the relapse happens because you have a parallel addiction, the neurons which is out there. And with a small trigger, it can again relapse. So if you have to make a parallel habit, right, you need to work on that many number of days. And he has proven that, if the very strong neurons which cannot be, where relapse cannot happen, usually, I mean, it's not 100%, but 90-95% of the thing you can guarantee it is when it is almost 4.5 to 5 years. Right, so you don't forget after that, and your trigger, will again come back with a choice. So that whole neural networking, right, the how neurons will connect to each other and making the habit, so that one trigger, can fire the complete set of neurons in a place, usually takes time. And it starts from building up right from your day one, and then those become significant in 28 to 40 days. So that's the key. And why it does and what it does, basically each dendrites which you see in the neuron, it connects, and the information about how it will connect, what other neuron it will be compatible with, is all based on its small database which is out there. And there is a nuclei which stores that information of adaptability and compatibility of that particular neuron which you are building. And whenever any event happens, external stimuli happens, right, sometimes you will see people, behaving differently with seeing some other person, right, or you yourself going out of control, with something. So those are all basically neurons coming in picture. It has become very unconscious, and something triggers, and then the whole chain of events, triggers out of it. So we have an important concept of related chords out there. The related chords are basically, one transaction you have done, and like you said, repair, right, or cancellation, or some warranty things, right? So this transaction, it will relate to another chords. That is also called a related chord. The way the neurons connect with others. and the adaptability and compatibility of those neurons when it fires. You navigate and you are able to recall everything what has happened on that particular context, right? Your human brain presents everything out in front of you. That is through the relationship of neurons with the others in the whole chaining, and that is what the VCA also does. It internally wires all the related cords. So if you have a line which is related to another line, or if you have TS related to another TS, all those wiring will internally happen automatically, and you can navigate from one transaction to another transaction seamlessly.
Okay.
Okay. So again, this is one chain, an example of that. On a transaction, some quotation has been shared, and after that, a call has been made. Then the email has come with an attachment, and then another phone call. So every single cord in itself is a complete ERP. Right. So it has everything inbuilt, the chat to phone to documents, email, meeting, and you all see it in a chronological order, as and when it has happened. You don't have to write your custom code to bring in phone or do something here. It's all very natural, it's stored very naturally.
So the dialing will happen through VCA if this is recorded this way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You will have in the footer, if you see in any cord, you will have an option and you can make a call from outside. If anybody calls from outside externally, on the top, that option, if that person is calling, if that person is calling for the first time, a new connection cord will be created. If he already exists in the system, you will be navigated to his cord. You don't have to click and navigate yourself. The system itself will take you there, and you can choose which transaction code you want to go. Okay. So the neural plasticity, I was speaking about that de-addiction thing, right? So the neuron in itself, when you make a new habit, it is very small, and as it progresses, it is plastic in nature, and it keeps on growing and keeps on making your connections. So this is another picture, of so the entire world is made up of pairs, right? And that is what the cord is. So the transactions are basically, so this is one pair, so if you see from the perspective of one party, you will see that since the structure is common, you can share, the other side, the same cord with whatever you want to share, and the data will flow in there. So you can imagine the entire set of businesses, business ecosystem as one single ecosystem, and you can have a transaction style which can span across all those systems. I can have one state being handled by one business, another state which can be of an external state. You have that option, which can go as a task to your vendor. And then the third can go to the customer. And the fourth can come back, and all of them can see all of them in one place.
So I think it was there in the video that we were sent. For example, if I want to buy an insurance, I put the request to my insurance agency. My insurance agency asks for quotes from different insurance companies. Then when I get it, the three best I pick and submit it to the customer. The customer picks the one that he wants. So this is all part of a single system, but different people are interacting on the same transaction.
So it is just not the departments within an organization which sees a unified view.
Externally.
It is the entire ecosystem which can, because of the unified structure, the entire ecosystem can collaborate on that.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so that is the same video which you might have seen built on top of this. So you have one Kroger, so when you have a vehicle, you will have an insurance policy which you will buy. You will have a vehicle manufacturer whom you will be dealing with from the purchase standpoint. You will be dealing for a loan with let's say the Chase.
Right.
Then you will have a garage. So all of them coming together in one single unified structure, and all of them get a single view.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, this is pretty much the idea that was there in that video also.
Yes. So this is one of the again the contemporary research in terms of the heat map of the human brain, how it appears when you have when two people are interacting, and they plotted the heat map of the contextual information, right? And you see that what you understand versus what the other person is understanding, it's completely different. They're making completely two different context out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to the coherent, if you have the communication, which is where you have the data which is all unified, the what you explain, between two people, the coherence is very neat here. The structure of heat map, if you see in the human brain, is almost symmetrical.
So basically, in the first case, it is like, I want an extra bed. I tell one person over call, and he tells the other person, but the person may not understand it correctly, and there is no place he can look up to recheck.
Yes, there is no place. That
Okay.
is the key thing, right? It becomes
Yeah.
complex in a business,
Yeah.
right? Different teams work together to make one transaction happen.
Yeah.
Right.
But in the
And
other case, there is
yes,
a central place where all the information is there. So if I say room number 35, my extra bed is required, then there is a place where this person knows he can verify that information.
correct.
But in
If
this,
you
it is just based on his immediate understanding.
immediate understanding, and this one team member is seeing one set of systems which he has an access to.
Yeah.
Right, you have dropped an email which only the reception or maybe one other employee might have gotten access, whereas the other guy who is preparing that room, he doesn't
has
have
a
an
list,
access to that
a handwritten list that is given to him where
handwritten
this
list. Yes,
information is missed.
yes, and the manager doesn't get an access to all the systems.
Yeah.
Because of the limitation of the system or because of the access control mechanism.
Yeah.
So nobody, the whole team as a whole, and in between, if somebody shifts their job, there's another challenge.
Yeah.
Right. So it becomes very difficult for people to get a unified view. And unless you have a unified view, you can't make a smart decisions out of it. So here you see that everybody gets to see the entire code.
Yeah.
In the manner as it has happened. So even you take a case of the customer has already done some transaction with you a year back, and now the team has changed, right? And you have to give a quotation to him, right? He has to again explain or now put all the efforts again. Whereas you might have seen those, if you would have a unified structure, you might have seen what has happened in the past, and you can take a possibly better decisions now. Plus, he gets a delight factor that yes, you know everything about it.
Okay. Next.
Yes, so this is just a picture of the entire ecosystem, how it is going to look like.
So this is the public platform idea.
Yes. And that's the end of it. So we feel that this whole neural cord concept will change the way world behaves, and this is one such revolutionary concept which can change the complete you have it in the hardware systems, you have cloud now. In software, if we don't do, somebody else will do. So it is something like, if you see from the from the eyes of how the entire ecosystem, the whole world works is, you have in a human system, for example, you have the emotional aspect of it and then the logical aspect of it, right? Now the emotional aspect of the today's world is basically connecting the entire emotional system, right? For example, something has happened to a particular person, the entire Twitter and Facebook come together. The exchange of those emotions are to express your emotions with a global society in place, right, is happening now. So the world is moving towards connecting people with each other, right? Connecting. So any technology which is connecting the entire world to make it one single platform, is going to succeed. And that is how that is what the nature loves, and that is where the entire ecosystem is going to converge, right? So anything which will make the entire world as a single body, right? Just like a human body, because we are all the fractal structure out of it, right? Which makes the entire human entire world. So you are hit by something, right? Or you can see at a local level in your community, there is some problem, right, which people report, and you try to solve it within the community itself, right, within your society itself. If it doesn't solve within your society, then you go out and seek help from maybe the police, right? And then if it doesn't solve, then you further go up. And if nobody solves, then you create your own ideas around it and you solve it. Just like your, the alpha cells and beta cells, just like your immune system in a COVID, how it worked, right? So that's how the whole world works. So the emotional system is getting connected, and you have system in place. A lot of platforms are in place, which is helping the entire world to connect as a single body. Now, what we don't have right now is the logical aspect of the human body, as a whole, for the entire world. And that human body as a whole in the entire world is missing right now. And that is where, if we won't do, somebody else will do, obviously, right? So we waited for it, and we have been doing in a services, and then we thought that, okay, let's take that pain, because this pain is something which you have to take in repainting the entire system. And that's not something which is opportunistic, in which you can get results in 6 months. You are rethinking how VoIP works, how chat works. You are reinventing everything, because you have to rewire everything, and that takes time, right? And that is where we are right now. So we are able to prove it, and now that neural cord is out there in the market, we are now scaling it up, uh, and we have a team who has produced results in some cases within 2 weeks as well. And once we are going to an industry vertical, if we have the products, you will see that the customers are getting the expected results maybe in a week or so. So that's the speed which we are talking about. So when the computer came, back in those early days, we used to write programs for a specific computer only. So it's a HP system, then that program will run only on that system. If it's a IBM system, it will only run on that system. Two computers were not able to talk. The Windows came, and that revolutionized the complete concept. The systems and the business, yes, it start interacting with each other. We are on a Zoom call now, we are sitting at 3 different places, we are interacting just because of that operating system. And that's where we see that neural cord is a business operating system. It is going to connect the entire world seamlessly.
Okay. So we are now, as a business, we are at a stage where we have developed the product, we have some proof of concept, and we are beginning to penetrate into the market by implementing it for different businesses.
Correct. So we have now what we are looking at is, and I'll possibly pause the video here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or stop the recording here.
Yes.